In this video article, we're going to look at the Writing Vault 4 Laws of AI and Fiction Writing. Before we get started, if you want to get an email with a timestamped overview every time I release a new video like this, head over to deliberate-practice.com, sign up for my email list. Very shortly I'll be starting kind of like a course called How to Write Your First Short Story, but it will have information in there that will be relevant if you've only written a few stories. When I finished it, all the parts will be not chopped up, they'll be edited together to create a long video that'll go on YouTube. That'll be maybe 2.5, 3 hour video. But as I'm creating the parts, there'll be the director's cut version where each of the individual sections will have their own page, their own section, timestamp notes, all that kind of stuff, as well as implementation guidelines and stuff like that. So go over to the website and do that. Okay. Here's the context for today's video, and I know this video will be contentious to some people. That's fine. The last screen or penultimate screen of the presentation that I'm using to guide me through this video asks for your feedback. Love to know what you think about all this. Looking for comments, see how if you're a fiction writer and using AI, love to know how you're using it. Anyway, here's the context as to how this video came to be. So in my previous video, I overviewed a method of using AI to help writers build their idea muscles, and that video was based on something that Brandon Sanderson workshopped in one of his early BYU lectures, his 2013 lecture. This method involved suggesting a genre to the AI, choosing a story like The Sixth Sense and saying what kind of plot type is that, and then the AI would show 5 random but genre appropriate settings plus 5 random character types, and these things were all so the character types were like cardboard cutout character types, and the genre appropriate settings were very much just simple settings like abandoned tunnel under supermarket, that kind of thing. So nothing particularly detailed, but what you would do is you would take those 4 elements, so a genre, a story type, plot type, so revenge or quest or love story, or and I asked AI if it knew the 20 master plots, which it did, and I said use those as a guide, and then pick one of the random character types, one of the random genre appropriate settings, and then write a paragraph with a story overview based on that. So you're not asking the AI, you're not saying to the AI, okay, with this character in this setting, and we've chosen the genre and we've chosen the story type, suggest a story. It's the writer's job to do that. Here's a screen grab of a comment that I got. So you are not building your fiction idea muscles, you're using a shortcut that scraps every author who came before you, and that means the work produced is not actually yours. It is a corroborative project done without consent. Now obviously this guy or lady meant to write scrapes. It sounds like a man, which is an interesting side thing. That doesn't sound like a lady. It sounds like a man who's commented that. But I don't know. I've blanked the YouTube user's name out because I'm not interested in people leaving this video and going and finding the comment and saying things to this guy. I left him a reply about how I see AI, but it got me thinking about stuff, and it also had me scratching my head figuratively, because the AI was literally generating lists that were 100% generic. Wasn't suggesting any story details. It was the writer's job to make those items fit into some kind of story. Now, even if that story, and there were 3 examples in that video, at the end of this video there's a recommended videos slide, and I'll make sure that the previous video is on there so you can see that if you've not seen it. But it was clearly the intention that you'd use these things just as prompts, and then you would have to create a story idea from those things. No different than if you made a deck of settings, a deck of character types, a deck of story types, and mixed and matched and said, okay, I've got character A, setting B, and story type C. What story could I tell from that? So the sole use of AI in that was to just generate these generic lists. That was it. And as I said, I replied, but in doing that reply, it made me think about AI and writers, which led to the Writer's Vault's 4 Laws of AI and Fiction Writing. Now, as I mentioned already, I've been consuming lots of Brandon's early BYU videos in the last couple of weeks. Some really interesting stuff in them. The early ones, although the production values are way more inferior than, say, the 2025 lecture series, the actual content is more interesting because it's a much more intimate setting, and students interrupt the lecture with questions, and Brandon stops and answers the questions. And there's some gold in those things. So, and irrespective, and just so you know, although I read fantasy, I've never read anything of Brandon's. But he's a great teacher. He's really interesting. He says, I'm going to teach you this. I don't use it, but writers I do know. And he's very clear about saying you need to find what works for you. So those are worth going and looking at. And one of the things he talks about are he has his own laws of magic. And I thought, if Brandon can have laws of magic, then why can't I have laws of AI and fiction writing to act as guides? And so here they are. So law 1 is never let AI outline or plan your story. So who you are as a writer, i.e. the stories that you tell, is a melange of all your influences plus all your experiences. And like your fingerprint, it's 100% unique to you. So if you let AI outline or plan your story, then it's no longer yours. And your story, if you think of your own reading experience, there'll be authors that you read, and there'll be certain things that you get from those stories, whether you're aware of what they are or not. And if they produced their next book with AI and went to something else, you'd read it and go, I'm not reading this again, because it's not the things that I like this author for. In fact, you can see this. So Lee Childs, who writes the Jack Reacher books, I've read some of those and they're okay, but there are people who really like them. But on the recent ones, Lee's in his 70s now, mid-70s, and he's got a younger brother who's also an author, and he's letting his younger brother do much more of the heavy lifting of the writing. And if you look at the comments on Amazon on those later books, you can see people saying they're not the same anymore. And of course they're not the same, because Lee's not writing them 100%. It's the same thing. Your readers aren't stupid. So if you've got readers and generated readers, people who like your stuff, if you then start letting AI outline and plan your stories, all the things that make your stories uniquely you will start to slip away. Even if you don't know what they are, they come out subconsciously. The kind of ways that you view the world, the kind of thematic things you talk about, even if you just write an action thing that doesn't have any theme in your eyes, there will be readers who get theme from it and get experiences from it. You involve AI and that starts to leach away. And you don't want to put out stories for readers that are no longer uniquely yours. The other thing to say about AI is when it's been trained on massive amounts of data, in some cases illegally, looking at you, Anthropic, and the problem is, as far as I understand it, and if anyone knows more about AI than me and can either corroborate this or say I'm wrong, as far as I understand it, everything it's been trained on has been, it's basically been given it and said, train yourself on this, and no one's gone, train yourself on this, but this piece by Shakespeare should be weighted at 1,000, and this piece of shit that we got from Amazon or we illegally downloaded from torrent sites should be weighted at 1. And as far as I'm aware, there has been no weighting like that. So when AI suggests anything to you, by definition, it's going to be mediocre. You can do the math on why that is, but that's the case. So that's law 1. Never let AI outline or plan your story. Law 2, never let AI write your prose. So not only are your stories unique to you, but the way you put them on the page is also unique to you. The kind of sentences you write, whether you write dense, florid paragraphs or whether you write short, snappy sentences, maybe paragraphs of just 1 word or 2 words as appropriate. Those decisions are unique to you. And just as I mentioned at the end of the last slide, that because of the amount of mediocre material that's been fed into the AI to train it on, that affects its output. It's the same thing with the level of prose. Plus, people, when they start liking your stories, will respond to the kind of stories you tell and the way that you tell them. And those are your 2 main uniquenesses. And if you outsource either of those things, then you're no longer unique and you're just writing commoditized shit. And I'll have some thoughts on that in a later slide. But as a writer, your main strength is your uniqueness. And if it goes because you go to AI, then what makes you different as a writer, what makes you potentially appealing to readers as a writer, just goes out the window. Also, while AI's prose tends to be grammatically correct, it's also flat and devoid of emotion. And you can go to any of the AIs and get it to write something, and it will write something, and on the surface level, it seems okay in terms of you look at it, but when you read it, it just doesn't communicate anything. And a metaphor, and I didn't come up with this metaphor, I read it once somewhere and I've always really liked it, is if you put a turd in a perfume box, it's still a turd. So if you put nothing into nice prose, or something that has no emotional connection or emotional feeling in any way, and you wrap it up in nice prose, it's still basically empty. So it's like being hungry, eating something that's got no calories and is full of processed shit, and it just does nothing beneficial for you. So law 3, never let AI revise your work. Now, you might think that this would be a relatively safe thing you could let AI do, because you've written your words, they're on the page, you could paste them in and say, can you revise this? I think that's a massive mistake. And the reason is, and there's actually 2 reasons. The first one is AI doesn't see story structure, which is the big picture of your story, the way you do. So if you give AI, let's say you give it a short story or a novella and say, I want to revise this, it may revise it, but if it's not seeing story structure in the way that you do and the unique way you do, another of your uniquenesses, which is connected to the 2 laws we've already spoken about, it may change things that don't fit your vision. So you don't want to let it do that. And the second reason is revision actually does 2 jobs. The first job is makes the story better, but the second job is it helps identify your writing weaknesses so you can fix them. And if you give something to AI and say, oh, this needs tidy it up, you don't get to see, or you don't get a close look at your weaknesses and go, oh, hang on, I'm making this mistake. I made it here on page 3, and I made it here on page 12. Oh my gosh, and I did it here on page 13 or page 15 or whatever it is. You don't see those issues in the same way if you let AI do that work for you. So law 3, I think, is another really important one. And because of the connection between identifying your weaknesses and fix them, revision is a key part of your development as a writer if you do it like that. Most writers who do revise just revise, and they never post-revision look at their revisions. And I always say what you should do is print every draft out and write on it and do your revisions in hand. Don't do them on the computer, because then you've got a record of them, and then when, just as you have to let your draft sit before you revise it, if you let your revisions sit and come back to them after you've looked at another story, you'll look and you'll see and you'll go, look, I'm making these mistakes, and if I fix them, then those mistakes go and I become a better writer. So revision is a key part of that development, and if you let AI revise your work, you won't get that benefit. Law 4. Never let AI tell you what your readers want. We'll start with a quote from William Goldman. Nobody knows anything. Now, he was talking about the film industry, and the quote was in relation to movie executives saying things like, oh, we've got to have a film that has this, this, and this, and that will be a big hit. And often they would put these films together and they'd be so-so or have so-so results, and someone would take a chance on something that people would say, no, this will be terrible, and it would be a smash. So until you put your work in front of an audience, and until that work resonates with an audience to the point that they recommend it to friends, leave 5-star reviews on Amazon, that kind of thing, nobody will know whether it's me, you, AI, experienced book producers in the publishing industry. No one will know what will work. So don't ever type something into AI like, I want to write a thriller and I want it to be commercially viable. What could I write? Because the answers it gives you will be relatively meaningless. So the AI just doesn't know. My personal belief on what you should write is to write the kind of stories that you want to read, which speaks to another quote from Toni Morrison. If there's a book that you want to read that hasn't been written, then you must write it. And to me, that's the biggest thing about writing. If you want to write fiction, don't waste time writing things that you think, oh, I'm going to write this because I think it will sell, because you don't know. No one knows. AI especially doesn't know. So don't try and game the market using AI, or even don't try and game the market. And there's more thoughts on that here. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that people who use AI to write, basically their primary motivation is they're looking to make a quick buck or a quick bit of money in disproportional amounts to the amount of effort they've invested. Writing a book is hard work. If you're going to write an 80,000 word novel, that can take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, depending on your writing speed. So you could write a book, put it out there, or send it to, if you're going the trad pub route, send it to agents to go to publishers, and you might get nowhere with it. Whereas these people are like, well, if I use AI, I can have it done in a couple of days and I can get it up on Amazon and blah blah blah. I think it's a quick buck for low return of effort play, and I don't think it works like that. I think if money is your main goal, there are other avenues you can pursue that are way more lucrative than fiction writing for a start. Now, having said that, there's a load of AI generating crap starting to affect the non-fiction market. I'm in non-fiction. I'm in a unique niche, and also one of the smallest niches on Amazon, sadly, but a unique niche where so far I haven't seen any AI generated books pop up, because my books, for example, they're music books. There are anything from 80 to 100 music examples specifically written for each book. I don't know how AI could actually do that. I'm sure at some stage it will get to it, but so in that niche, I'm not affected by that. But in other niches, you can see it. If you go on YouTube and search something like write colouring books with AI or create colouring books for KDP with AI, you'll find hundreds of videos of people teaching this stuff. And again, what they're trying to do, make some money for a low amount of effort. And the old cliche, if something seems too good to be true, it usually is, applies here. Even if you write a great book, there's no guarantee it will actually sell. So if money is your main goal, just forget about writing fiction books with AI. Just go and do something else, because there are other avenues that you can make much more money much more quickly than trying to do fiction writing. Now, that being said, there are tasks that writers can use AI for that don't affect their writing and don't affect the things that we've covered in these four laws. Now, that will be a video for another day, but I'd love to know your thoughts. So writers and AI is an interesting topic. It's also a contentious topic. There are the kind of person who left the comment that the video started out with, where, and I wouldn't insult people like that and call them Luddites or anything like that, but there's one end of the spectrum is writers who say if you use any form of AI in your writing, then you're not writing, the writing's not yours. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, you've got the get-rich-quick idiots who are just going, write me a 100,000-word thriller about this detective who does this, bing, that kind of thing. And I think there's somewhere, like all spectrums, there's somewhere, although it tends to be much more towards the we'll call it the Luddite end of the market, in my opinion. But I'd love to know what you think. So leave a comment below, or you can email me, paul@deliberate-practice.com. I prefer it if you left a comment on this one, so that other people can see. And if you see someone leave a comment that you don't agree with, don't abuse them or be rude to them. One of the biggest problems in modern life, which I think's been exacerbated by social media, is that when someone disagrees with you, there is a big percentage of people whose default response is to react aggressively or defensively. So if you don't agree with me, I've got no problem with that, but leave a comment and tell me why not, and we can have a chat about it. Maybe I'll change my mind, maybe you'll change your mind, maybe we'll agree to disagree. But the more people do that and connect with each other, and if you're an aspiring writer, you should have empathy for characters, so you should be a reasonably intelligent person, and be reasonably stable emotionally. If you think everything I've said in this video is utter crap, I'm not at all upset by that, but I'd love to know why you think. So rather than saying I think this is crap and you're full of shit, say I disagree with you and here's why, and we can have a chat about it, because we might both learn, and other people reading those comments, they might learn things as well. So if you see someone who writes something you don't agree with, don't go off the rails at them. Just say, excuse me, with the greatest respect, I don't agree with you and here's why, and create a little 1 or 2 paragraph reasoning of why you don't agree with them. The world would be a better place if more issues were treated like this. So please do that. If I see anyone leaving any crap, I'll just block them and delete it. So there's no point. The world doesn't need more hate in it. It needs more respect, more friendship, more tolerance. So so that's that. Some of the things writers can do with AI, I talk about in the resource I'm putting together for fiction writers, aspiring fiction writers, frustrated fiction writers. That's called the Writing Vault. You can see the URL there, and I'll put a link in the description so you can check that out. And thank you for your time today, and please do leave a comment. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because it's something that affects all of us who are writers, whether we want it to or not. So I'd love to know what you think about this, so please do leave a comment, and I'll leave you with some recommended videos, including the Idea Machine video based on Brandon's early BYU lecture.